But now and for Are We Walking into a Police State? It's Dispatches.
Members of this Labour government once spoke out eloquently for civil liberty. That government is now enacting measures from identity cards to restrictions on free speech that are unprecedented in modern times. And its leader maintains that these new laws are needed to make us all safer.
The whole of our system starts from the proposition that its duty is to protect the innocent from being wrongly convicted. Don't misunderstand me, that must be the duty of any criminal justice system. But surely our primary duty should be to allow law-abiding people to live in safety.
There is little evidence that these new laws and powers are actually making us any more secure. But there is evidence that such changes are making us less free to speak our minds, and more filed, docketed and snooped upon than any other free country on the planet.
Most of us tend to think that democracy and liberty are more or less the same thing. But actually, British freedom was born centuries before everyone had the vote. And modern-day British politicians are seeking and winning popularity by trying to undermine many of those ancient freedoms. Once they've gone, will we ever get them back? Is the state a fit guardian for those liberties? Is democracy in danger of destroying our liberty?
For centuries, the British people have come to Westminster to protest when they disagree with their rulers. That right is now under threat. The law now states that you need police permission to demonstrate near Parliament. Even some former communist states do not apply such restrictions. Last year, Maya Evans, a 25-year-old cook from Hastings, and some of her friends mounted a campaign to protest against the war in Iraq. They decided to take their protest to the Cenotaph, near Parliament.
So, you came here on October morning, just to make your protest against the amounts of killing that had happened in Iraq. It's not really terribly controversial, is it?
I didn't think so.
Their plan, as in other protests, was to read, reverently and quietly, the names of those killed in the current war.
My colleague and I placed the A1 posters in front of us. We've got our lists out, and I was reading out the names of the British soldiers. Master Engineer Gary Nicholson, aged 42.
Chief Technician Richard Brown, aged 40.
Flight Sergeant Mark Gibson, aged 34.
Sergeant Robert O'Connor, aged 38. We can read out these names for as long as we like, because we're not making a protest, we're making a television program. But if this were a protest, we would already now be facing arrest under the Serious Organised Crimes and Police Act 2005, and could be taken away under arrest, have our DNA, fingerprints and photographs taken. As it is, we're not making a protest, so we can carry on reading.
Sergeant Robert O'Connor, aged 38.
Corporal David Williams, aged 37.
But Maya and her friends were making a protest, if not for long.
Within 30 seconds, a group of officers came over and they pointed out that we were in a restricted protest zone and that our protest had been unauthorised.
The problem was they had no official permission.
The officer said, I'm arresting you under the Serious Organised Crime Police Act 2005, I think section 132, and I came along peacefully.
One of Maya's friends filmed the police escorting her off the scene.
How many of them did it take to arrest you?
I think the official number is 14, but I only remember about 8, to be honest.
There's a pretty direct connection between this monument and English liberty. The people whose sacrifices commemorated here died so that their children could grow up British, enjoying the freedoms which they themselves had experienced. They would have found it incredible that you now have to seek police permission to hold a demonstration within 1,100 yards of Parliament.
The portentous-sounding Serious Organised Crime and Police Act 2005, supposedly directed against mafia-style crooks, landed Meyer with a criminal record. This is more than a change in the law. It is part of a wide and deep change in the way we are governed, supposedly justified by the need to combat crime and disorder. While wrongdoers seem largely unaffected by all this, innocent citizens find that they are ruled by an increasingly officious and heavy hand. Simran Shah is an ordinary 19-year-old, but a few months ago he was the victim of some extraordinary policing.
I was going down the escalator and I saw the British Transport Police, kind of like a diamond formation. So I thought I'd take a photo of that with my camera phone. And then when I arrived at the bottom of the escalator, one of the British Transport Police came over, pulled me aside and searched me. They then took down my details, my height, my name, address, what clothes I was wearing.
You may think this was fair enough if the police really had believed Simran was a potential terrorist, but their behaviour suggests they were just throwing their weight around.
He barely even looked through the camera to find the photo, and he couldn't find it, and he kind of gave up. Had I been a terrorist, I would still have that photo on my camera. The idea of being in some sort of file or some sort of database under the Prevention of Terrorism Act is, of course, a completely daunting and horrible thought, especially if you are totally innocent.
In one way, Simran is lucky. Though his name is doubtless on some database or other, he was spared the treatment meted out to another victim of such pointless officiousness. Matthew Dodd is Mr. Harmless, a teenage train spotter. Free countries breed such people, eccentrics whose baffling enthusiasms are happily tolerated. But in Britain, raw suspicion is starting to replace that tolerance. And so it was that on a winter's afternoon last year in Birmingham, Matthew Dodd spotted something rotten in the state of Britain.
I was photographing the 1748 to Manchester Piccadilly, which was one of Virgin's older trains, which seems to be of a general interest to a railway enthusiast like myself. And I was just casually standing with my camera out, and my tripod, it was set up, this is just totally normally.
But that was the last normal thing that happened that day.
I was approached by a Network Rail officer who said that it was not permitted to take photographs on the station. And eventually he came to the conclusion that I had an attitude of some description, and that I would have to deal with the British Transport Police. 3 officers it was, came down, and I was given a full body search.
Full body search? This is in a public place?
This is in a public place, in front of...
So anyone who was watching could have thought that you were some kind of terrorist suspect?
Yeah, and it certainly felt that way.
The police who humiliated this gentle rail enthusiast seemed utterly absent when real trouble threatened at the same station.
I had a friend the other day who had a purse nicked. We saw nothing of the police, yet when I was doing something innocent, carrying out an innocent hobby, anyone could be getting away with anything. When the security people are down here dealing with my threat.
The police feel this kind of incident is unavoidable while they fight the terrorist threat.
You can't say what a terrorist looks like in the general sense. They could come from any background, any sex, any religion, any race. Police officers went along to talk to Mr. Dodd, and he was obviously found to be a rail enthusiast and went on his way. And I'm not saying we did get it wrong, but when one has 35,000 stops as we've had this year, from time to time we won't always get them right. We'll use our powers as appropriate to try and stop people causing further outrages to the system.
If there's anything in the world more innocent than train spotting, I don't know what it is. But thanks to our anti-terrorism legislation, it's now possible for someone to be searched in public for daring to take photographs of trains. Meanwhile, In the stations in the background, crime and disorder carry on completely uninterrupted.